On this episode of the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast, we have the CEO of Funnelytics, Mikael, the number one funnel mapping and analytics tool built by marketers for marketers. We dive into his winning ad that lasted well over 3 years, got 150,000 free users, and what made it work so well. We also kind of dive into solid upsells, downsells, and how to kind of monetize those customers on a long-term window. We also kind of dive into buyer perception, how to really position your products or services, and ultimately having a profit versus growth mindset. Tune in if you're into funnels and analytics and all that good stuff. You do not want to miss this one.
And she does a very, very interesting analogy that has stuck out with me and completely changed the way I look at things. And she says this. She says, imagine you create or invent a new baked good, right? It's made of flour. There's chocolate in it. It's moist, it's super delicious, and it's kind of like this hybrid between a cake and a muffin, right? So now you've got a very fundamental decision to make within your business. Are you going to categorize it as a cake, or are you going to categorize it as a muffin? Because whatever you choose will define your entire business. Here's what I mean. Dylan, where do you buy a muffin?
Listening to the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast, where we break down the financial principles that rich advertisers are deploying today to turn advertising into profit and get tons of traffic to their websites without killing their cash. These advertisers, agencies, affiliates, brands are responsible for managing over $1 billion a year in ad spend. You'll hear about what's working for them today, their rich ads, and we'll roast their epic failures and crappy ads on the internet with poor ads. Let's get into it.
All right, y'all. We're back in business with another episode of the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast. We got your host, Zach Johnson, in the house, and of course, myself, Dylan. What's good, Zach?
Good. Analytics is what's good.
Oh, yeah. If y'all have funnels and love analytics, you're going to love this guest because we have the number one funnel mapping and analytics tool built by marketers for marketers. These guys probably spend $400 to $500K a year slanging ads for themselves, of course. But we have the CEO today. So Mikael from Funnelytics, man, what's good?
What's up, man? How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good now that you're on here. Well, sweet, man.
Looking forward to it.
Heck yeah. Yeah, give everybody a little background of kind of who you are, kind of what you're getting into these days, so everybody kind of has some context.
Sure, yeah. Mikael Dia, I'm in Toronto, Canada, repping up here, and I built Funnelytics about we're approaching on 3 years now. And we built this tool to help marketers better understand what's happening, what's working, what's not working with their marketing funnels, right? With everything that they put out in this universe on the internet. Like, you do all of this work as marketers and you have no clue whether or not it actually really gives you money back. So I wanted a visual way to kind of tell me precisely what was working and what wasn't. So we decided to build this tool called Funnelytics, and here we are 3 years later. We've got over 150,000 people in our platform. We have a freemium model, so 150,000 on the free tool, and a bunch of them, 10,000 or so on paid. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. We're continuing.
That's awesome, man. One of the things I love about Funnelytics is the visualization on the funnel maps, right? Like, that is so unique to you guys. And I don't know kind of you guys operate in the same space as Wicked Reports or Hyros or, in that bucket, but there's just not too many solutions out there where you can visualize your funnel flow by the pages. Like, most visualizations come in the form of pie charts, like spreadsheets, and they're just numbers, and marketers, we suck at math. We call it marketer math over here, where they just round up to the nearest million or billion. And and so that's one thing I've always appreciated about Funnelytics. But yeah, congrats on all the free users, man. That is no small feat. So congrats.
Yeah, right. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you said, right? The visual aspect is what marketers sit there and they they sit down on in front of a whiteboard, come up with their strategies or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, a diagramming tool. They map it all out, and then they're stuck looking at spreadsheets and charts and graphs to try and understand, like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
how does the stuff that I put on my whiteboard translate to these numbers in these spreadsheets, and like, how am I
Yeah.
supposed to understand? So we just wanted to simplify that and bridge that gap a little bit more.
So I want to talk about this, your guys' rich ad. What's working now for you guys? You have an amazing story in the sense that it's actually very similar to a friend of mine here in Austin, Dave Rogenmoser at Proof, in the sense that you guys like crushed ads for the first year, both of you guys, into a free trial or freemium style offer, and scaled your spend up aggressively in year one to like 80,000, 100,000 a month, give or take. Would love to hear that story.
Yeah,
But I've seen it, it's awesome when it happens in the world of SaaS. And I would love to kind of like focus this conversation really around, for other marketers that are wanting to jump into SaaS, like what is the funnel and the ad strategy that they should be thinking of? Because like most B2B SaaS companies are lucky to be spending 5, 10K a month
yeah.
uh, on ads. So I think you guys have always had an amazing funnel there. So yeah, why don't you give everybody a good overview of
Sure.
what's working now and how you got there?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with SaaS is most SaaS companies are happy to get a 12-month payback period on their customer acquisition, and it's like, well, how can you be happy with 12 months? Like, you got to wait a whole year before you make your money back and then make some profit. Like, that's a long time to wait. I prefer like 24 hours or like 7 days. If I can make my money back that quickly, I can scale as quickly as I want. So our number one ad that has been running for 3+ years, we actually just swapped it out because our platform no longer looks the way it looked in the ad, and people started getting confused. We had a very, very simple demo. Like, it was like a super sped up 30-second video of this mapping tool, right? So you can kind of diagram out your entire funnel. And we just basically advertised this free mapping tool using this little 30-second, super fast demo video that, with like this cheesy background music, I literally whipped it up using like me just dragging on the canvas, and then I sped it up like 5 times, and then I downloaded this free like like type of
Uh-huh.
music, and that's it. That was the ad, and then the copy was something like, free mapping tool, map out your marketing funnels in a matter of seconds, and that's what we ran for the longest time, and we pushed people to the free mapping tool. Um, and there's a couple things that I did that I think most people fail to do, or don't think about. So the first thing is, when we push people to the free mapping tool, right away we offer them something to buy, right? Like, most people are happy to get people into their software, and then they want to do the whole onboarding and the free trial and all that stuff. Well, we gave you a free tool, but instead of just giving you a free trial and waiting 14 days, we give you something that you can buy right away. So for us, it was this template kit. We gave you, for $50, you could, instead of starting with a blank canvas, you could start with over 50 different types of templates from some of the world's best marketers. And I think the conversion rate on that from cold traffic from Facebook was about 4.5% or something, uh, right from that. So then from there, we upsold people if they bought, so that we could increase our cart value. But one of the most important things that I did was, everybody who came into the free mapping tool, we push them into a community. We push them into a Facebook group. Number one, that allowed me to understand who these people were and communicate and build trust and value with them. Also, it created a sense of, well, community. That's what the whole point of a Facebook group is. It created this sense of that they were part of something slightly bigger. But I've leveraged that group. Right now, that group's sitting at about 28,000 people. I've leveraged that group over time to keep doing promotions and make more money, and even decide what to offer next. Right, I would actually go inside of the Facebook group, post a question and say, hey, would you guys prefer if we built something like this? Or would you guys prefer this type of course or this type of course? And literally people would vote. And then I'd just be like, all right, well, here it is. And then people would pay me money for it. So that group became a big piece of our growth. But ultimately, that's what allowed us to scale so quickly. Free mapping tool, instant upsell. We made our money back right there within the first, like on ad spend. It was about, for every dollar we spent, we made about $1.20 on literally the front end acquisition. Everybody moved into a Facebook group, and everything else was that dripped afterwards was profit and well, on ad spend at least, and allowed us to scale. So I think that's the biggest difference.
So one of the things I have is like, as a SaaS company, it's very easy to like start just, having it coming up with a funnel. Well, let me back up. It's not easy to come up with an amazing winning converting funnel. Awesome job on like that, because it was awesome. But like after that, B2B SaaS companies, they're going to go through this evolution, right? Of just like you blitz Facebook ads, you get your MRR up like phenomenal numbers in 12 months. And then you realize, oh, like there's, some serious churn here from people that are just coming in.
Yep.
These aren't our quote unquote ideal, clients.
Yep.
And then you waffle for like a year of like just kind of running off promotions and like kind of figuring out where are the good customers.
Yep.
That where's the LTV. And then on the backside, you really start to like figure that out. And then it becomes a little bit more of a slower, like strategic, like we're getting like better deals, better customer, better LTV. So what does the backside of that funnel, now look like? Because I feel like you guys are a lot more focused now, AKA like less opportunistic of like, we're free. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. I think this is the problem, right? Like when you're first getting started, you have no clue truly who your customer is. So your job is to build up. Think of like picture a circle, right? Your job is to build up that pool of customers, people who are willing to take out their credit card and give you money. So you want to get that pool big enough to the point where I can now start doing an analysis of that pool of people. If that pool is too small, then I have no clue. I can't start segmenting, because when you grow that pool of customers, you can then take smaller circles within that bigger circle, and you can identify that actually some of these people, like for example, with us, let's say the big pool is called, let's call them funnel marketers, right? Anybody and everyone who considers themselves a funnel marketer or who does funnel marketing to some degree. Well, what we found is as we built up this bigger pool of funnel marketers, we were able to realize that actually the funnel service providers, more importantly, the people who are an actual agency looking to sell funnels and shift their offering towards that, have our highest lifetime value, have a higher retention, lower churn, bigger. They're willing to spend way more on education and on services on the back end. So within this bigger pool of funnel marketers, we found that funnel providers, funnel agencies are actually a better fit for us as a whole, right? So, but that doesn't work if you don't blitz at the beginning, if you don't build a big enough pool of customers, because you can't make an analysis on 30 people, right? So that's the first step, is like when you blitz, you start to build up that big pool of customers. And if you don't segment your customers, then you'll never know, or speak to them, I should say, you won't be able to see trends or analysis of within this bigger pool of customers who's actually our true customer. So you're right. Like now we've gotten to this point where it makes no more sense for us to keep blitzing the entire funnel marketing space, because we're just getting a bunch of customers that we don't care about at the end of the day, right? That we don't really want as customers, that end up churning. They end up wasting our support resources and asking so many questions that I can't even install a script on WordPress and all of these things. But then there's this pool of customers that we know that we can serve. We can bring that higher lifetime value. We can actually help them get to that next level. So now the job is to refine our funnel and say, all right, we don't want to speak to everybody. We don't want to talk about this free mapping tool. we want to talk about the free mapping tool for these funnel providers, or use this tool to sell and pitch clients, right? For example.
Mhm.
And now that pool is smaller, so I can't blitz the market the same way because the pool of customers is actually smaller. But because
Right.
they're coming in with the right intent, we can now upsell them, and we
Mm.
can kind of grow that pool of
Yeah.
customers.
One of the best things I heard was from Eric Carlson, who runs 10x. What is it? 10x Factory, and he says he uses the word concept of use. Okay, so Funnelytics has this analytics tool, and like your first concept of use of your tech or your product was get better insights into your funnel, right?
Yep.
The second concept of use that's working better for you, and concept of use is just a better way of like what's your hook
Yeah.
into the product that's going to yield a better LTV. And Funnel Dash made the same pivot to that hook from here's a better analytics insight tool to here is a audit dashboard for as a sales enablement tool. And we also made the same pivot into agencies as well in our early days of like agencies appreciate the dashboards, but the reason why agencies like will pay more is not because of like the pain of getting access to the numbers. It's the opportunity of like getting an actual client to like pay them, right? And so they're going to start to incorporate it like in a typical agency they might have like 10, 20, 30 clients, but they might be pitching, let's just say, hundreds of people a year. So the user engagement on that concept of use is going to really like bump up. Whereas if an agency kind of is like has like a small amount of clients, they're not using it all that much, if that makes sense. Is that like is that like a fair assessment, or like a recap of like what Eric was saying in terms of this concept of use of just sometimes, I think like a non-internet marketing, like B2B SaaS example would be like Feebreeze, right? Like it was just like this, they didn't really like know what to do with that until they kind of turned it into this like refresher spray.
Febreze?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, what is
I was like, what are you
Feebreeze?
talking about?
Who
I'm
calls it
sorry.
Feebreeze?
My wife makes fun of me every time I say this. I have like the worst habit of saying Febreze.
But go ahead, like,
You guys
what
have
are
the
you
most
talking
confused
about?
look on your face.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. No, so I agree with you, right? Like we started off with, there's layers to it. So even though if you think about going back to the circle concept, right? So funnel marketers is this bigger circle, and within that circle are
Mhm.
funnel service providers, right? Funnel agencies, let's call them,
Mhm.
or people who
Mhm.
sell funnels as a service. The Even though the usage of the tool is the same, the tool itself is doing the exact same thing, the job to be done is very different. So, what I'm doing when I'm using it as a service provider is I'm using it to close clients and I'm using it to retain clients. But the outcome is a client pays me money, right?
Mhm.
Versus an in house team is looking, in order for the service provider to retain clients, they've got to look at the data, they got to put together a report, and they've got to communicate that to the client, and they got to kind of go through the same motion, but the outcome is the client sticking around and paying me for months and months, right? Versus an in-house team or an in-house marketer, even though they're looking at the data, they're doing an analysis, and they're putting together a report, the outcome is not getting a client to stick around. The outcome is optimizing my funnel. It's figuring out what can I do next in order to improve the process. So it's extremely important to understand, what does your customer truly do this thing for, like, or use this thing for, right?
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and understanding the market is extremely important too. I had a really, there's a book called Obviously Awesome, and this
Mhm.
changed a ton of my perception around what I should be doing with Funnelytics and and this is beyond just Funnelytics. This is for anybody. The book is called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford, and it's all about positioning. And she does a very, very interesting analogy that has stuck out with me and completely changed the way I look at things. And she says this. She says, imagine you create or invent a new baked good, right? It's made of flour. There's chocolate in it. It's moist. It's super delicious. And it's kind of like this hybrid between a cake and a muffin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got a very fundamental decision to make within your business. Are you going to categorize it as a cake, or are you going to categorize it as a muffin? Because whatever you choose will define your entire business.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I mean. Dylan, where do you buy a muffin?
Starbucks or somewhere easy, typically.
Yeah. When do you eat it?
Probably in the morning. I'm a muffin morning guy.
Yeah. What's the competition? Like, what's the alternative?
Oh, bagels.
Yeah.
Bagels. Big bagel guy.
How much does it cost?
I think the bagels are a little bit more expensive. Usually
How much does a muffin cost? Give me.
We'll say $250-ish, $253 maybe.
Right. Okay. So by you saying it's a muffin, you've already given this entire perception as to what category it fits in. Okay, let's do the same exercise with cake, right? So cake, where do you buy cake?
Great American cookie cakes.
How much do they cost?
Shoot, probably $10-15, if not more.
When do you eat it? When do you eat a cake?
When I'm celebrating.
On occasion, maybe for dessert, right? After dinner?
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, what is the competition to a cake?
A lot. I feel like there's a lot more competition with cakes.
And you're eating tarts, pies, stuff like that, right?
A lot of sweets, yeah.
Yeah, and so you see how fundamentally it's the same product, right? Whether it's a muffin or a cake, it's still this baked good. But by me categorizing it as a cake, I've already given the market and the people who are about to buy it this perception as to, well, it has to be in this price range. This is what I'm thinking about it. Versus if I'm putting it as a muffin, it's got to be, it's a morning thing. It's certainly not going to be an afternoon thing. And I think a lot of people fail to realize this within their own business. Like for me, it made me realize a lot about even the funnel marketing space and whether or not we're truly a funnel marketing tool or we're actually a customer journey tool. And that might sound to be very similar, but when somebody thinks about customer journeys, it's typically a bigger type of business.
Oh, yeah.
They've got customers to analyze because that's the whole point of customer journeys, right? They've got more traffic, they've got more data. Versus funnel marketing, you're thinking more about the newbie who's getting into the info marketing space, who's trying to figure out what upsells and downsells and what they should put on their sales page and all of that stuff. Fundamentally, our tool does the same thing for both, right? But by us figuring out which category we fit in, it completely changes the perception, right? It completely changes how people approach it and what they think it should be worth, how much they're willing to pay for it, and all of that stuff. So I don't know if that even answers your question. I just kind of went on a rant there, but
I liked it. That was our perception. Heck yeah, man.
This episode is brought to you by Funnel Dash's Ad Card, the only charge card exclusively for your digital ad spend. And if you're an advertiser spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on ads, and you're in e-commerce, and you're looking for more capital or credit to scale, then you're probably familiar with solutions like Shopify Capital, Brex, and ClearBank. The problem with these solutions is the cost of capital is expensive, and they take a percentage of your revenue. One of the beauties with AdCard, when you combine it with one of our in-network, of our 5,000 in-network agency partners, you have the opportunity to qualify for free ad capital funding, where we'll load up your ad card with an additional $50,000 all the way up to $1 million of additional capital to deploy on platforms like Facebook, Google, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and more. So if that's you, if you're in e-commerce, spending a ton on ads, and you're looking for a way to decrease the cost of capital, check out AdCard. We'll get back to the show.
Well, we dove into the rich ad. Give us something terrible, man. Let's hear this kind of poor ad. Something you thought would probably kill it, didn't work out too hot. Release the beast.
Yeah, we've tested a lot of different things, I mean, 99% of all of our ads don't work. So, you know, there's that. Number one, you've got to test a lot. There's a lot of different things that you've got to test, and you got to keep cranking out ads. Like people who think if you're lucky enough to get one ad up and it works, like consider yourself lucky, right? Like this, it doesn't happen. It very rarely happens. So for example, when we realized that we wanted to go after funnel agencies, we started testing a lot of different funnels to bring in these types of agencies, not through the platform per se, but directly through a coaching program that we offer these agencies. We've had a lot of success getting these agencies coming in through the platform, using the tool for themselves to sell and pitch clients. And then when they get value, then we get them to um, apply for this program that we have. So that has worked really well for us. But we wanted to scale that, and we wanted to go out to the market and see if we can just get these agencies straight into the program without this long roundabout way to getting there. So we tested webinars. We tested like front end $47 offers to try and self liquidating funnels. We tested all sorts of stuff, speaking directly to the market. Um, and it's been challenging, way more challenging than we expected from the standpoint of trying to make that work. It's not as easy as people think, like to just do a ad to a webinar and then like get on the phone and close people. It's not that simple. So I can't think of like a very specific ad that completely bombed, but I can think of a bunch of campaigns that we spent thousands of dollars where it's like, oh, this didn't even break even. This didn't even make us any money. And we waited far too long before shutting it off. And it's like, all right, well, just $5,000 down the drain. Yeah, let's just give it to Mark Zuckerberg and let him have fun with it, because we're clearly not happy with this $5,000. So yeah, I mean, I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head, but it's happened a lot.
Makes sense, especially on the webinar side of things. They're so hit or miss. So I mean, especially when you have to have the back end with the one call closes, you have to have the sales team for it, have them, updated with the knowledge and stuff. So I think that's sufficient. That works.
Yeah, the education process, right? I think a lot of people miss that little piece of it. Like it's the cycle to get somebody to commit, and the difference between a free mapping tool to them then using that free mapping tool to close a client, and then being in part of our Facebook group and getting a ton of value through that Facebook group, and then applying for this program, and then getting on a call and closing. Well, that entire time that they've been indoctrinated in goodwill and all the stuff that we've given them is very different than an ad to a landing page to a 60-minute webinar to try and close them right on the call, right? It's a way different process.
Oh, 100%. Well, snap. Quite the pour ad there. That's super legit there. I love hearing the mixed cases with webinar funnels. That cracks me up sometimes. But
Yeah.
with the final piece of the pie, the final segment, of course, we'd love to kind of dive into some financial tips or principles. So based off your expertise and experience, what kind of financial tips or principles could you give to the audience?
Lots.
Yeah.
We're talking about business here as a whole.
How do you do business with all the customers, the freebies, how are you kind of monetizing these in the long road? Maybe how you're gauging LTV on different timing windows. I mean, with your business, it's pretty interesting because I feel like cash flow is huge.
Yeah, cash flow is always huge. I think the first tip I would give anybody is, if you're going to start advertising, you've got to find the easiest, fastest way to recoup that money. How can you recoup your advertising dollars and liquidate your advertising dollars as fast as possible? Literally, unless you're going to go and raise millions of dollars from a VC and you have that money to burn and wait 12 months or 8, 10 months, however long it is, you've got to be smart with it. So step number one is, if you want to scale, you've got to liquidate your advertising costs. Step number two is, you can't liquidate your advertising costs and hope to be like profitable and make a ton of money. So step number two is, well, what's the sequence and what's the funnel that you're going to push people through, and what's that back end offer that is actually going to have a higher value to actually make that profit, right? To go down that path. In terms of, SaaS and LTV and churn and all that stuff, like you have to understand your cohorts. You have to understand the different types of people that come into the door. Like I said before, if you take that big circle of customers, and you break it down into these various small groups, you can see that they will all have different values and different. So if you want to scale, you've got to understand what you're scaling, right? You can't get the whole market. You've got to focus on that smaller piece that is actually valuable to you. So um, understand what you're scaling, and then the rest is all operating expenses and all of that stuff. I mean, teams, etc. Like there's different philosophies. At the end of the day, there's two ways to grow a business. You can either focus on profit or you can focus on growth, right? And I think it's extremely important to decide what you want as a CEO, as a founder. Do you want profit? In which case you've got to be lean. You've got to try to get the most dollar per revenue per employee as possible. You've got to be as efficient as possible. Or if you want to go for growth and market share, well, you've got to realize that you're going to burn money, right? You're going to go down that path of scale, which means you don't make profit, and you're going to have to hire teams and all that stuff. So,
And have you kind of like balance those, right? Like got a yeah, different seasons of your business. I feel like you've gone through different phases of growth and fundraise. And so how do you look at those now currently? Like what is important to you at this stage?
for me at this stage, it's pure future investments. Like I'm building for my like 5-10 year vision, which we were talking before at the before this show about like Uber and Uber's autonomous vehicles and how that division of the company is burning something like $500 million a year, which is ludicrous, right? It's crazy to think about, but they're building for this new future, right? This new vision for what the future can actually be like. So there's a balance, right? You've got to keep growing the customer segment that is profitable and scale that and keep extracting value and money from that. But at the same time, I'm also investing in where are we going next, and how are we moving towards that? How does the product need to shift, and what do the engineers need to build in order for us to move towards that direction? So it's this balance between growing the existing pool versus building stuff for the future. And then it's what's your tolerance level? Like for us, we've got an internal tolerance level of we're